The grip came from behind. Sudden. Firm. Confident. The man holding on wasn't angry. He wasn't rushed. He was smiling, like this was already settled. Steven Seagal stiffened for half a second, more from surprise than panic. The room around them kept moving, voices, footsteps, background noise, unaware that something had shifted. "Let me go," he said sharply. Not loud, not dramatic, just clear enough to carry weight. The man didn't release his hold. He leaned in slightly, smile widening, as if the words were a joke. As if this was a misunderstanding in his favor. A few nearby people noticed the tension but didn't step in. To them, it looked like nothing serious. Two men standing close. No raised fists. No shouting. Steven didn't struggle. Didn't twist. Didn't rush to break free. His body went still instead, the kind of stillness that feels deliberate. The man mistook that pause for hesitation. For uncertainty. For a moment where confidence could be tested. He tightened his grip just slightly. Enough to prove a point. Enough to show control. Steven exhaled slowly. Not in fear. Not in frustration. In calculation. The smile on the man's face stayed exactly where it was. He thought he had time. He thought he had leverage. Have you ever seen someone feel completely in control, right before they realized they weren't? The room didn't know it yet. But in that brief pause, before movement, before consequence, the outcome was already decided. From the outside, the situation looked simple. One man holding another. One confident. One restrained. The man with the grip stood tall, shoulders squared, weight planted firmly on his heels. He had done this before, or at least believed he had. His posture said he understood pressure, dominance, leverage. Steven Seagal, by contrast, didn't look imposing in that moment. No aggressive stance. No visible tension in his arms. Just a controlled stillness, like someone waiting for the right second. To anyone watching, the assumption was obvious. The man holding on had the advantage. He was closer. He had the grip. He was smiling. People nearby glanced over and then looked away. Nothing about the scene screamed danger. It felt contained. Manageable. The man with the grip believed the same thing. He shifted his feet slightly, settling into comfort. That small adjustment said everything. He thought the situation was already under control. Steven didn't argue. Didn't repeat himself. Didn't try to explain who he was or why this was a mistake. His silence allowed the assumption to grow unchecked. The man leaned in closer, lowering his voice, confident now. Close enough to feel in charge. Close enough to believe resistance wouldn't come. Steven's hands remained down. Relaxed. Not clenched. Not preparing, at least not visibly. The power imbalance felt locked in. One man certain. One man quiet. That certainty was the problem. The man holding Steven Seagal started talking. Not loudly. Not aggressively. But with the kind of confidence that comes from believing the outcome is already decided. His words were casual, almost playful. A comment here. A remark there. Nothing threatening on the surface, but every sentence carried the same message. I'm in control. He adjusted his grip slightly, not to hurt, just to remind. A subtle squeeze. A small shift of weight. The kind of move meant to reinforce dominance without drawing attention. Steven didn't react. No flinch. No tightening of the jaw. No attempt to pry the hands away. That calm stood out. In situations like this, people usually respond somehow. Panic, anger, resistance. Steven did none of it. His breathing stayed slow and even. His posture stayed balanced, despite being restrained. The man noticed. At first, he took it as compliance. Then as uncertainty. Finally, as something that didn't sit right. He talked more. Filled the space with words, laughter, confidence. Ego has a way of needing sound to survive. Steven's eyes stayed forward, focused, aware. He wasn't ignoring the man, he was reading him. The grip, the balance, the distance between feet. The contrast grew sharper with every second. One man proving himself outwardly. One man holding everything inward. People nearby began to sense it. Not the danger, but the imbalance. The kind where noise and silence collide. The man smiled again, wider this time. That smile came from certainty. From believing calm meant weakness. Steven finally spoke, quietly. Not repeating his demand. Not raising his voice. Just enough to be heard. The words landed differently this time. Not as a request. As a warning disguised as restraint. The man laughed it off. Because ego rarely recognizes danger when it arrives calmly. Do you think calm behavior makes people underestimate what someone is capable of? The air between them tightened. The contrast was complete now. Confidence versus composure. Noise versus control. And only one of those needed to prove itself. Nothing happened. And that was the problem. The grip stayed firm. Not tighter. Not looser. Just present. The man holding Steven Seagal waited for resistance that never came. No struggle. No sudden movement. Only that same steady calm. Silence stretched between them. The kind that makes people uncomfortable because it refuses to explain itself. The man shifted his weight again, a little less confidently this time. Steven's body adjusted almost invisibly. A subtle change in balance. A barely noticeable shift of his shoulder. Not an escape attempt. Just preparation. The man felt it before he understood it. Something had changed, but he couldn't point to what. His smile stiffened. Not gone, just strained. People nearby slowed their movements. Conversations dipped. Eyes lingered longer than before. The moment had crossed from curiosity into tension. Steven didn't look back. Didn't acknowledge the crowd. Didn't signal intent. His stillness was no longer passive. It felt deliberate. The man's grip became his anchor. Letting go now would feel like backing down. Holding on felt like proof of control. He chose to hold. The air felt heavier. Time seemed to stretch, not because of fear, but anticipation. Everyone sensed a line had been crossed, even if no one could say how. Steven exhaled again. Slow. Measured. Final. The implied threat wasn't in movement. It was in restraint. In the feeling that whatever happened next wouldn't be loud. Wouldn't be dramatic. And wouldn't take long. The man thought he still had control. That was the mistake. He read Steven's silence as hesitation. The relaxed posture as uncertainty. The lack of resistance as permission. His grip tightened slightly, not out of fear, but confidence. A silent message, I'm still in charge. Steven didn't react. No flinch. No warning. Not even a glance. That calm became misleading. To the man, it felt like dominance had settled in his favor. He leaned closer, lowering his voice, saying something meant to humiliate. Words meant to provoke a reaction. Nothing came back. The crowd sensed it too. This wasn't a standoff anymore. It was imbalance. Steven's stillness wasn't empty. It was focused, compressed, like pressure building where no one could see it. The man shifted again, adjusting his stance for comfort. That small movement, unnecessary, careless, changed everything. Steven's center stayed grounded. His breathing stayed even. His body stayed loose in a way that didn't belong to someone trapped. For the first time, doubt flickered across the man's face. Just a fraction of a second. But it was enough. He had misread the moment. He thought silence meant weakness. He thought patience meant fear. He thought control had to be loud to be real. Have you ever mistaken someone's calm for weakness, only to realize later it was restraint? Steven finally moved his eyes. Not his body. just his eyes. They met the man's face briefly. Not with anger. Not with challenge. With certainty. And in that instant, the man understood. Whatever was about to happen wasn't going to be a struggle. It happened faster than thought. Faster than warning. Faster than regret. Steven didn't pull away. He didn't fight the grip head-on. He didn't explode with force. He shifted, barely. A subtle turn of the wrist. A small step inward instead of back. The kind of movement that looks meaningless unless you understand balance. The man felt it before he saw it. His grip suddenly lost structure. His strength, which had felt solid seconds earlier, scattered. Steven's body stayed relaxed. But the space between them changed. In one controlled motion, Steven redirected the hold, not with power, but placement. The man's elbow bent at an angle it wasn't meant to hold under pressure. Not snapped. Not crushed. Just caught. The smile vanished instantly. Pain arrived late, but when it did, it arrived clean and sharp. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that shuts the body down before the mind can argue. The man's knees buckled without drama. Not from force. From understanding. Steven never raised his voice. Never tightened his jaw. Never rushed. He adjusted again, half a step. And suddenly the man wasn't holding Steven anymore. He was holding onto the floor. Every movement was efficient. Nothing extra. Nothing showy. The crowd didn't react at first. They needed a second to process what they'd just seen. This wasn't a fight. It was a correction. The man tried to pull away, but the attempt only made the pressure clearer. Steven wasn't hurting him. He was ending options. The realization spread across the man's face. This wasn't about strength. This wasn't about dominance. This was about control that didn't need permission. Steven finally spoke, quietly. Not a threat. Not an insult. Just enough words to signal finality. The grip released. The space returned. And just like that, it was over. No victory pose. No reaction shot. No explanation. Only a room full of people standing still, trying to understand how something so fast had felt so inevitable. The silence afterward felt heavier than the moment itself. No one rushed forward. No one laughed. No one clapped. The man stayed where he was for a second longer than necessary, steadying his breath, recalibrating his pride before his body. When he stood up, it wasn't with anger. It was with caution. A new kind. Steven had already stepped back. Not away, just out of it. He adjusted his jacket, the same way someone would after standing up from a chair. No tension. No rush. His face didn't carry victory. It carried neutrality. The room slowly came back to life. Chairs scraped lightly. Someone cleared their throat. Eyes moved, but avoided direct contact. People weren't shocked by what they saw. They were unsettled by what didn't happen. No yelling. No aggression. No dominance ritual. Just a quiet reset of the hierarchy everyone thought they understood. The man didn't look back. Not because he was told not to, but because he already knew better. Steven didn't watch him leave. Didn't track his steps. Didn't need closure. The balance had already been restored. A few people exchanged looks, trying to confirm what they'd witnessed was real. Some replayed it in their heads, slower this time, noticing details they'd missed, the timing, the positioning, the absence of force. What lingered wasn't fear. It was clarity. Steven took his seat like nothing significant had occurred. Same posture. Same calm presence. The contrast unsettled people more than violence ever could. No one approached him. Not out of intimidation, but respect earned without demand. Moments like this don't announce lessons. They let you discover them quietly, on your own, when your assumptions start rearranging themselves. And somewhere in that silence, a thought passed through every witness's mind. Why do you think moments without celebration often feel more powerful than dramatic ones? No one answered it out loud. They didn't need to, because the room already had. Steven didn't stay long after that. Not because he was avoiding attention, but because attention was no longer required. He stood when the timing felt natural, not immediate. No one noticed at first. Conversations had restarted, but softer now, as if the room had learned a new volume. When people did realize he was leaving, there was no sudden reaction. No rush to stop him. No attempts to speak. Just space opening instinctively in his path. That space said everything. No one questioned him. No one tested him. No one tried to reassert anything. Authority had already been established, not through force, but through certainty. Steven didn't scan the room for approval. Didn't check faces. Didn't measure reactions. He already knew the outcome. At the door, he paused briefly, not to look back, but to adjust his coat again. The same calm movement. The same unremarkable gesture. It felt intentional without being performative. Behind him, the man who had tried to hold him stood still, pretending to focus on something else. He didn't look up. Not out of shame, but understanding. Some things, once experienced, don't need to be discussed. Steven stepped outside, the door closing softly behind him. The sound wasn't dramatic. It didn't echo. But it marked an ending all the same. Inside, the room felt different. Not tense. Not afraid. Just recalibrated. People carried that moment with them, not as a story to tell, but as a reference point. A quiet reminder that real authority doesn't announce itself, doesn't demand space, and doesn't linger to be admired. It arrives, does what's necessary, and leaves without explanation. And long after Steven was gone, the lesson remained. Strength doesn't need witnesses. And authority doesn't need applause. Outside, the air felt cooler. Not because the temperature had changed, but because the tension had stayed behind. Steven walked a few steps before slowing down. Not stopping. Just easing his pace, as if the moment had finally settled where it belonged. The noise from inside the building dulled quickly, replaced by ordinary sounds, cars passing, distant voices, the rhythm of a normal evening. Nothing about his expression suggested adrenaline. No release. No aftermath rush. That was the most revealing part. For Steven, the moment hadn't been an event. It was a correction. He didn't replay it in his head. Didn't analyze what could have gone differently. Didn't carry it as proof of anything. He reached his car and paused briefly, resting his hand on the door. The pause wasn't reflective, it was habitual. The same calm rhythm that had been present from the beginning. Inside the building, the energy remained altered. People spoke differently now. They stood a little farther apart. They watched more than they talked. No one chased after him with questions. No one asked for explanations. Because explanations would have cheapened what they'd witnessed. Steven got in, closed the door, and started the engine. The sound was unremarkable. The moment didn't demand a soundtrack. As he drove away, the streetlights passed evenly across the windshield, steady, predictable, controlled. And somewhere behind him, people were still processing the same thought, each in their own way. If real strength doesn't announce itself, how often do we overlook it simply because it doesn't look the way we expect? That question stayed with them longer than the incident itself. Not as curiosity, as adjustment. Because once you've seen restraint mistaken for weakness, and certainty mistaken for silence, you don't see authority the same way again.